Yo guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I will be talking about the newest movie from Danny Boyle, 28 Years Later. Alright, so 23 years after the first movie in the franchise, 23 years after 28 days later, we finally have 28 weeks later and 28 years later on our horizon. We also do not have 28 months later, which I still think is a pretty big bummer because I do think I would have wanted to know what happens after 2.5 years, stuff like that. So yeah, that's very sorry. I'm very sad we still just went to 28 years later. But here we are. For this one, Danny Boyle and Alex Garland decided to return after not returning for the sequel 28 Weeks, and where they only had a producing credit on that. Today they are back to give us the movie, and they made something very unexpected. I mean, all three of these movies are completely different from each other tonally wise. I mean, the first one is very eerie, very horror. The second one still has some of those aspects, but is more like an action movie and more character driven and group driven and stuff like that. And this one just decides to throw all of that out, creates two movies, the first half and the second half, which are distinctively different, and they chose to make something more narrative driven, and it works for around 90% of the movie. It works really well. Like, what they did with the lore and story of this franchise is, I have to say, incredible. The way that they evolved the infected and they evolved the humans and how they adapt to this quarantine zone and how they adapt to this world full of infected and stuff like that is really nice to see. It also ignores what happens in 28 weeks later. It just is a straight up sequel to 28 days, which is an interesting choice, I have to say, because they do not talk about what happens to the end of 28 weeks later, making sure that that movie feels like it's not a part of it or something like that, which is an interesting choice. Which is one of the weird choices I think this movie makes. But the things that they do with the story and the things that they do for evolving those creatures after 28 years, that's genuinely incredible. There's a big thought behind it. There's now this entire... Are you okay? There's now this entire ecosystem that has been built, which is nice, and it also works for tension, it works for making things more logical, it works for things feeling more vibrant and making them feel bigger than they already are, which is normal after 28 years. The sad thing about it is that the way they explained it, like how could this happen and how did the evolving happen, is absolute bullshit. It's a throwaway line. Oh yeah, the zombies, the infected that do like this, well yeah, they used something, and that's it. And I was like, okay, that's a really cheap way to do some of that. So yeah, there are some narrative changes that they did which are really nice. The movie focuses mostly on Spike, which is a kid of 12 years old, and the relationship with his mother and his father. The first half basically is Spike and his father. It's what you can expect from a movie like this. It's what you can expect from a 28 movie. It has zombies or infected. It has tension. It goes to the mainland. It's very intense to see, actually. It's a very, very gripping movie. And if the entire movie would have been like that, I think if it was a 1.5 hour long movie, it would have worked perfectly fine. It would have been a great movie. But I do think it wouldn't have been enough to fill the entire 2 hours of runtime of this. So I think they could have done something more with it, but also not a lot. So they needed something extra for the story to make the most sense and for the story to make as big of an impact as they try to do. I do also think that is just written straight for us guys to get it all out of the way, just to get Spike where he needs to be, but it's not the story that they actually wanted to tell. Because I feel like that comes in the second half. Like the second half has this insane tonal shift where we go back to the mainland now with the mother, and there is a lot else going on. Like they need to look for somebody, they encounter other stuff, which is also great, but there are also very weird tonal shifts that you just do not realize. Like there's a scene wherever an army guy from Sweden comes and the movie turns into a comedy for 20 minutes, which is very weird because it does take you out of the tension quite a lot, but it's still not bad and it still makes sense in some ways. There are some gimmicks of Spike being born inside of this narrowed down world and of course the other guy coming from 2025 basically. That's very interesting, or 2029, 2030, something around there, because it does play in the future apparently. Yeah, that is a very weird tonal shift. They do something with that time gap that that both of these don't have, and it's funny to see, but it's also stretched out a little too long. And then you get to another character and the movie turns absolutely beautiful from that point on. It's absolutely mesmerizing to see how Ralph Fiennes adapts to this world and how he did some things, and it's very beautiful to see what they did with his character and how they evolved and how they made the story around him and how they used his character to see both the beauty and the sadness of death and stuff like that. Absolutely love that. And there is a moment in this movie around 20 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes before the actual ending of the movie that they could have used perfectly as the ending of the movie, and then they throw another 20 minutes in the mix. And after you get choked up, there's a moment with Ralph Fiennes' character that you really choke up on. It's an intensely emotional moment. And then they go to the end and it turns into a comedy. Again, very weird tonal shifts. And I don't know if those tonal shifts were the best way to go, the best option for them to do, but they did them, and it's weird. And it does make me interested in seeing where the fuck the sequel might go in January, The Bone Temple. Because if the entire movie is going to be like that, that's not going to be on anyone's radar, and I do not think anyone is going to be happy with that, but we will have to see. I just want to say that the ending of this movie is very weird considering the rest of it. I have a theory on one of the guys' names, and the name's casted, that we are going to see someone back in a sequel. I know we're going to see someone back in a sequel, but I feel like they're connected to that guy. But in what way or capacity? Because in the first movie, it did not really feel like something like that might happen with his character. So that's really interesting, and I have no idea what they were going for with that one. And I feel like that ending is going to throw a lot of people off. And I feel like this movie, I have seen it online already, the critics are raving about it, but more general audiences are not exceptionally happy with the tonal shifts that this movie make. I, for one, I really liked what they did with the movie. I thought it was absolutely great. I felt the tension. I was on board with everything apart from the ending, and even that Swedish guy didn't do anything for me, like didn't make me mad and stuff like that. So pretty happy with the overall product, but I do see its flaws. It's going to be very low, but still a very earned 4.5 stars in the heart for me. Alright, what did you think of this one? Please let me know in the comments down below, because I'm really excited to hear your opinion on it. I want to thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Thank you, and bye bye.